The following program, NORML Show Live, is intended for responsible adults only. We advocate for the repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults. We discuss the science, culture, and controversy about America's marijuana laws. We do not advocate or encourage any illegal activity and advise all listeners to learn their state and federal marijuana laws by visiting norml.org, NORML.org. Opinions and claims made by guests and advertisers of NORML Show Live are their own and do not necessarily reflect the philosophy and policies of NORML. Listener discretion is advised.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
From the promise of legalization.
And I think we need to rethink and decriminalize our marijuana laws.
To the agony of prohibition.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws presents NORML Show Live, Marijuana Nation. Now, here's your host, NORML's Outreach Coordinator, Radical Russ Belville.
Good afternoon, tokers and tokettes, and welcome. It is Wednesday, December 8th, 2010, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Thanks for joining us for our next 2 hours of news, talk, interviews, information, music, comedy, statistics, and more by, for, and about the cannabis community. Coming to you live and direct from Rolla J Studios here in beautiful Portland, Oregon, and joining me here in the studio is the lovely and talented Ganja John.
That's sweet of you to say.
I think you're lovely and talented.
Aww.
And more lovely and talented is also our Cannabis Carrie, who's up in Astoria, Oregon.
I am. Hello. I mean, not lovely and talented, but I'm here in Astoria for sure.
You are certainly lovely and talented. In fact, we're all lovely and talented today. Unfortunately, these past couple of days, these 2 days in a row are two real bummer holiday or remembrance days. Yesterday, of course, was Pearl Harbor Day. Today, of course, is the 30th anniversary of the assassination of John Lennon. We're really sad about that, too. And we got a little clip here from John.
No, we don't.
We don't. All right.
It wasn't working.
I played tons of John Lennon in my show today. It was actually sort of hard to get through. I got a little weepy.
Yeah. It's a real shame, when they're assassinating musicians. I mean, that's the thing that's you really got to think about. That's just amazing. Yeah. Anyway,
he was mentally ill, the man that shot him. So that could happen anywhere, anytime.
Yeah, absolutely true. Coming up on today's show, of course, it's Wednesday, so we do our cannabis science segment. We'll be visiting with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. He'll be answering your live chat questions and call-in questions on cannabis science, history, culture, health, anything you want to know about cannabis, aside from cultivation. Don't ask about which strains. We don't know that stuff. But we'll take those calls at 1/2 At 45 past, we are going to do a look at marijuana demographics and statistics as a part of a presentation I'm doing later tonight in Astoria, Oregon, called Cannabis Past, Present, and Future. So we will record that as well so that you can get that information from our video feed at stickem.com. It is also Irie Wednesday, and so Grateful Dread Public Radio from New Jersey will be bringing us some Jacob Miller with Tired Fee Lick Weed. Interesting song title. But before we get to all of that, of course, we have our hemp headlines with Cannabis Carrie. What's in the news today?
Oh, I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. I just sat down on the chair. We're going to have we're going to catch up on what's going on in New Jersey. I'm sorry, you guys. Also, we're going to go to Colorado, who is actually catching up on some work. We're going to talk about that. And the feds finally have something to say, sort of, about the Oakland mega marijuana farms.
All right. We'll get all to that right after this first break. Also reminding people we're still raising money for our bandwidth at the KushCon in Denver, the world's largest ever marijuana expo. You can get the information from the scrolling caption at the bottom of our webcam. So check that out. Please send your money in. We'll upgrade our bandwidth. Also, John Doe Radio tells us we've got tickets to give away. We'll tell you more about that in our second hour. Stay tuned. It's NORML Show Live.
You're listening to NORML Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation. Been busted? Need a lawyer? Call the NORML Legal Committee for an attorney near you. Find one at NORML.org. Remember, attorneys are cheaper than a lifelong criminal drug record.
It's that freedom. I'm free to do whatever.
In today's busy world, we're inundated by advertising for all types of pharmaceuticals that come with a laundry list of potential side effects. Shouldn't you have better medical choices? Natural alternatives to pills pushed by Big Pharma? At Alternative Medical Choices, you could choose natural, safe, and effective alternative therapies that are right for your budget without nasty side effects. Cannabis, or marijuana, has been a legal medicine in the Pacific Northwest since 1998. Our doctors will help determine your qualifications for a medical marijuana recommendation in Oregon, no matter where you live. Our massage therapists will ease your aches and stress with soothing hemp seed oil or cannabis-infused massage salves. We also offer acupuncture, Reiki, and other alternative health therapies. Call Alternative Medical Choices in Portland, Oregon at 503-288-5579 or visit our website at www.altmedchoices.com. We specialize in out-of-state recommendations. That's www.altmedchoices.com or call 503-288-5579.
Medical marijuana, industrial hemp, consumer cannabis. It's time for this week's NORML News with Cannabis Carrie.
We've been closely following the drama unfolding over New Jersey's new medical marijuana program that pits New Jersey Governor Chris Christie against cannabis activists trying to activate a long-fought-for medical program. The Christie administration proposed very restrictive proposals to the already restrictive program last month. On Friday, Governor Christie, in a press conference on the matter, decided to back off of one of the proposals that would have limited the number of growers in the state to 2 instead of the law's intention of 6. At that press conference, he took a dig at the bill's sponsor, Senator Nick Scutari, who he accused of playing politics and said to the press corps that Senator Scutari was unwilling to compromise and that he had all but given up trying to negotiate with the statesman. Well, today, Governor Scutari finally fired back, saying that as far as he was concerned, that there had never been any compromise on the governor's side. The New Jersey Senate could vote Monday on a resolution chastening the Christie administration for creating a medical marijuana program that critics say is unworkable, despite regulation changes proposed last week. The changes in his proposal that Governor Christie did not address was limiting the strength of cannabis that can be distributed to a paltry 10% for what we can only assume is for public safety. Really, we don't know why he wants to limit the quality of the medical marijuana. Russ, do you?
Hard to tell, you know. The only thing I can think about this is that they think of marijuana like they think of alcohol, and they think that, oh, you know, alcohol that's more powerful, you know, if you talk about Everclear or whiskey versus beer or wine, well, the Everclear and whiskey is more dangerous because it's more potent. Therefore, cannabis that's more potent must be more dangerous, so let's limit the potency on it. It's completely backward thinking, though. The potency of cannabis is irrelevant because cannabis is non-toxic.
Catch a different spin with Mark Hoppus.
Oh, that was interesting.
Not sure what that was.
Very interesting. But the potency of cannabis is irrelevant because the cannabis is non-toxic. So it doesn't matter how potent it is. The more potent cannabis you get, the less of it you need to use to achieve the desired effect. In essence, what they're doing here by limiting the cannabis THC percentage to 10% or less is they're forcing medical marijuana patients to have to use more cannabis. And since many of them will be using cannabis in smoked form, and the smoke of cannabis is pretty much the major harm of it, then they are causing people to have more harm by smoking more cannabis of lesser potency to get the same desired effect. They're also subsidizing the black market. Just because you say medical marijuana has 10% or less potency doesn't stop everyone who's growing marijuana from growing marijuana that might be more potent than that. They'll take that more potent marijuana, they'll sell it out on the streets. And the patients looking for the more effective medical marijuana will go to the streets to get that medical marijuana. It's a lose-lose situation, and Senator Scutari is right. There has been no compromise from Governor Christie's office. Governor Christie thinks compromise is allowing us to have the 6 dispensaries that the law already said we were supposed to have. This is negotiations in bad faith by Governor Christie, and good luck with Senator Scutari on holding up those new regulations.
The Colorado State Health Department said on Tuesday that they are finally catching up with the backlog of medical marijuana patient applications and should be on top of it by year's end. For many months, the backlog of applicants waiting to hear from the health department about their approval status, that the state was forced to allow applicants, whether they were approved or not, to purchase medical marijuana from one of the state's many medical marijuana dispensaries. This caused some problems. Just last month, nearly 2,000 applicants were rejected after as long as 8 months due to the passage of SB 109 that changed the restrictions on the type of doctor allowed to make medical marijuana recommendations. The patients had assumed that they would be approved. Now, issues like this caused the Colorado Department of Revenue, who has the task of monitoring and enforcing the medical marijuana program, to warn retailers of that medical marijuana should not be sold to any patient unless they had a doctor's recommendation that was more than 35 days old. Now, to catch up on the backlog, the department hired temporary workers to help process applications. Also helping is that the number of new applicants have dropped to a few thousand a month, down from a frenzy earlier this year when they were receiving a few thousand a day. Getting to the bottom of the applicant pile means that the health department has some hard data to report. About 2% of Colorado residents now have cards to buy medical marijuana. That is just about 116,000. Also catching up means that people applying for cards will now know within the 35 days required by law whether or not their applications have been approved. The department will lay off the temporary workers sometime in January.
That's such a weird provision that they have here, is that the doctor's recommendation should be more than 35 days old for it to be considered legitimate. And the reason this has happened is because in the Colorado law, they have that many days by statute to decide whether or not an application is valid. So it's a weird situation in that someone may be a perfectly valid medical marijuana patient. Let's say someone diagnosed with brain cancer goes into their doctor and says, I just got diagnosed with brain cancer. I'd like to use medical marijuana to deal with the pain, the nausea of chemotherapy. The doctor reviews the record, says, yes, you definitely qualify. Let's fill out all your paperwork. Let's send it to the state of Colorado and make you legal. From that point on, that brain cancer patient's supposed to wait 35 days before receiving any medication, before using any medical marijuana, just so we can give the state a chance to disqualify their paperwork. And considering that most of the paperwork, by way over 98% of the paperwork that's submitted to the state of Colorado, turns out to be valid. So very, very few people are ever dismissed from the program in the first place. It's completely unlike what we do here in Oregon. In the state of Oregon, when you turn your paperwork in, you're assumed to be a patient until proven that you're not. The minute you turn that paperwork in, you are covered under the law. You don't have to wait no 30 days, no 35 days, and Colorado should do the same thing. A patient should be considered a patient based on the doctor's recommendation, not whether the bureaucrats in Denver managed to get through the paperwork in time.
And the success of the California city of Oakland when it comes to regulating and promoting medical cannabis has grown largely unchecked by any federal oversight or comment. Earlier this year, the City Council of Oakland voted to issue permits for industrial-scale medical marijuana farms, the first program of its kind in the nation. 4 hydroponic warehouses, each holding around 30,000 cannabis plants, were green-lighted and expected to yield the city between $4.8 and $7.7 million per year in tax revenues. City council members and supporters hope that the farms will help rebrand this rusting port city as the capital of all things cannabis, including their own brand of marijuana-related products and even tourist destination tours and packages. But now that may have been a bit too much for the feds. Officials from the Justice Department Civil Division and the U.S. Attorney's Office in San Francisco delivered the blunt message to Oakland City Attorney John Russo that they have been warned that the Justice Department sees this move towards industrialized medical marijuana production as a clearly illegal large-scale pot growing operation, with Oakland planning to get a cut of the illicit profits. The message came from 2 officials who asked not to be identified because they were not authorized to talk about the meetings, but one official said that the warning was very clear. Some advocates say there have been signs that this was coming. In an August memo, City Attorney Russo issued a memo raising legal concerns about the plan, and yesterday the Bay Citizen reported that he had declined to sign off on the city's marijuana farm plan. But that doesn't seem to matter to most of Oakland's politicians. Medical marijuana businesses have become major political donors and have enjoyed widespread public support. It was noted that both of Oakland's leading mayoral candidates showed up to the grand reopening of the Weed Grow dispensary earlier this year, year that has products and boasts a super marijuana store that is based in East Oakland. City Council President Jane Bruner said in response to the Russo warning news that the city should know what they're getting into, leaving some to speculate that the door is still slightly open to the possibility that the city could still back down on the marijuana megafarms.
Yeah, this is such a weird situation because, of course, Attorney General Holder came out and said that the scarce federal resources should not be used to go after medical marijuana providers that are operating in accordance with state law. Well, that's what they're trying to do here in Oakland. They're working with their local officials, they're working with state officials, and they want to create these mega farms, these big industrial grows to supply the medical marijuana users in the Bay Area. So you'd think if they're going to leave legal medical marijuana alone, they'd leave those people alone. But of course, that's not the way they're going to do things. They're worried about there being too much marijuana, about marijuana being diverted. So it seems quite counterintuitive to me that if you're trying to control the medical marijuana, you would want it in a few small or a few large places where you can keep an eye on it instead of being grown by everybody and his friend, on a small scale where we have very little control over what's going on. Either way, the federal government's between a rock and a hard place here because they realize that as these mega grows go into operation, they will create a whole lot of income, a whole lot of money, and a lot of political power amongst the owners of those grows, amongst the politicians in the Bay Area that receive those campaign finance donations. That's what they're really scared about here, the political power that can be had by these mega grows by consolidating the operations of medical marijuana growing in Oakland, California. That's what they're afraid of, and this is the fight that needs to happen. We're glad that those brave souls in Oakland are doing something to take on the feds.
And narcotic detectives in Germany today arrested what they are calling an, quote, old 68er, a moniker given to the group of students that participated in political protests across the country back in 1968. Police say the man willingly handed over 5 ounces of cannabis, but then they decided to look around his apartment in the small town of Montebar. But when they entered, they found a 6-foot budding marijuana plant in a planter decorated like a Christmas tree in the man's living room. The plant was adorned with Christmas lights and tinsel. He told the officers that the tree would have Christmas gifts arranged underneath the plant according to tradition come Christmas. Well, maybe not this year. The Grinchy cops hauled it away.
O Tannenbaum, wie treu sind deine Blätter. Du grünst nicht nur zur Sommerzeit, nein, auch im Winter, wenn es schneit. O Tannenbaum, wie treu sind deine Blätter. It'd be even better, O Tannenhampf, I guess it would be. Great idea. 6 foot tall marijuana Christmas tree. How many people have done that? Growing your outdoor weed sometimes.
Not me.
Not you? Not putting lights around it? No tinsel around it? Oh, it's a shame that they took it away, but a cute little story there out of Germany. Hey, folks, before we go, I want to give you a heads up on the upcoming KushCon in Denver. Of course, we are going to be broadcasting or streaming live from KushCon Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, December 17th, 18th, and 19th. 350,000 square feet, the largest hemp expo ever, as far as we can tell, looking back at our records, happening in Denver, Colorado. We're going to bring you live coverage. You can check out the scrolling caption at the bottom, donate to KushCon. You can send us funds by PayPal, send it to radicalruss@gmail.com, or you can send a check or money order through our snail mail address, 4110 Southeast Hawthorne Boulevard, number 161, Portland, Oregon, 97214. All that information's on the scroll. We'll also have it at our blog at stash.normal.org. We got some good news at the beginning of the show from John Doe at johndoeradio.com in Denver, Colorado. We have tickets to give away to KushCon in Denver. If you're going to be in the Denver area and you'd like to go to KushCon absolutely free, you can email into the ticket giveaway at johndoeradio.com. The email address is johndoeradiogiveaway@gmail.com. That's johndoeradiogiveaway@gmail.com. And you might be one of the winners of the exclusive free tickets to go see KushCon in Denver, Colorado. Also, we are auctioning off this book, Ed Rosenthal's Marijuana Grower's Handbook, signed by Tommy Chong, who wrote the foreword, by Keith Stroup, who wrote the introduction, and we'll have it signed by Ed Rosenthal himself. 3 signatures from giants in the marijuana movement, and one of the best full-color books. It's used at Oaksterdam. It's one of their textbooks on how to grow quality marijuana. So Ed Rosenthal's Marijuana Grower's Handbook. If you'd like to get your copy of this, we're having an online silent auction by emailing to to stash@normal.org. The current high bid is $100. If you want to bid more than that for this book with the 3 autographs in it, please send your email in to stash@normal.org. We will announce the winners on Monday's show. So far, we have raised about $500 for the increase in our bandwidth. We're looking to get the premium bandwidth with the best quality connection for our streaming so you can enjoy the 3 days at Denver's KushCon.
I think it's time for a break, Russ.
I think we'll have our own little KushCon right here.
Yes.
We got to get practice. We got to get ready for it, man. This is the pros, man. We'll be right back after this.
It's 20 after the hour, and we have to take a short break, if you know what I mean. Please support these sponsors who support NORML Show Live.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would sell you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
Georgia. Hi, this is Willie Nelson, and I need your help. Our marijuana laws are terribly unfair, and they make criminals out of law-abiding citizens. Nearly 2,000 Americans are arrested every day on marijuana charges, and we are unfairly destroying the lives and careers of hundreds of thousands of people simply because they smoke marijuana. These are not criminals. They are average citizens like you, good neighbors who work hard, raise families, pay taxes, and contribute to their communities. And it's time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers. We need your help to end marijuana prohibition once and for all. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
It's time for your Daily Toker Tunes, the best in 420-friendly music from all genres that uplifts, entertains, and informs the public. Our PodSafe music is donated by freedom-loving musicians who support our goal of ending adult marijuana prohibition. Today we get tunes for Irie Wednesday, our celebration of that mellow vibe we find in the best of reggae, ska, calypso, and Latin music. Brought to you by Grateful Dread Public Radio, Summit, New Jersey's progressive peace station at gdreadradio.net. If you'd like to submit your song to be played on NORML Show Live, send it to us at stash@normal.org. Now, here's some great independent marijuana music for today's Daily Toker Tunes. All right, welcome back, everyone. For today's Irie Wednesday, we get some music from Grateful Dread Public Radio. Find them at gdreadradio.com. We don't have a recording from her today.
We were supposed to actually call. That's my bad.
Oh, we were supposed to call her today?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
brat. Well, I will have to get the number.
I never gave her my Skype to tell me stuff like that. So.
Oh, no.
You know.
Well, we'll get that fixed next time. So sorry about that, Grateful Dread. We'll be back with you next week, and we'll do a live call-in. This next song is one from Jacob Miller, and it's I think it's a familiar one that we've had on the stash before. It's called Tired Fee Lick Weed. I have no idea what that means. Fee Lick Weed. I don't know. I never understand that reggae stuff, but here it is, Tired Fee Lick Weed.
Pipe in a gully. We want to come out in the open, with the breeze skin blowing so far away, to the north, to the south, to the east and to the west, to the west. Talking about Jonestown, Trenchtown, concrete jungle too. From Waterhouse, that's the west, that's the best, that's the west. From St. John's, it comes to you, the best Cali weed you ever drew. So why should you run and hide from the red seam, the blue seam, the cocky close to? Tired feel liquid in a bush. in a gully. We want to come out in the open with a breeze can blowing so far away to the north, to the south, to the east and to the west. To the west. Ooh, now we want to be free. Ooh, From St. John's, it comes to you, the best golly weed you ever drew. So why should you run and hide from the red stadium, the blue stadium, the cocky clothes too? Yes, tired for liquid in a bush, tired for lick pipe in a gully. We want to come out in the open with the breeze can blow it so far away to the north, to the south, to the east and to the west. Too much you lease, too much you'll jar. Security guard and hall. Ooh, yes.
You want a copy of that song for your iPod? Check out the Daily Toker Tunes at the Stash blog by surfing to stash.normal.org and choosing Media and then Toker Tunes from the main menu.
Starfish Designs, makers of the original Gandalf.
I'm Radical Russ, and when I want to relax, I always have my 17-inch long original Gandalf from Starfish Designs nearby. The hand-blown borosilicate glass is strong and easy to clean, and the design is sleek and sophisticated. Starfish Designs are available from Bend, Oregon at a glass retailer near you. For locations, call 541-788-GLASS. That's 541-788-4527. Normal Show Live reminds you to never consent to a search. If you're holding and you consent, in most states you will be arrested immediately and you will go to jail. If you don't consent to a search, police may try to intimidate you by threatening to bring in drug-sniffing dogs or try to fool you by saying things will go easier if you consent. Yeah, easier for them, sure. Stand your ground, refuse the search, and ask the officer if you're free to go. If they still detain you and eventually find your contraband, you'll be no more busted than if you had allowed the search. But by refusing the search, your attorney has a chance to win your acquittal before a judge. If you consent to the search, your attorney's hands are tied. You can find a list of NORML Legal Committee attorneys specializing in marijuana cases by visiting the Find a Lawyer link at normal.org.
Cannabinoids and health.
Cannabinoids.
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 Why am I having trouble saying that?
Cannabinoids.
Jeez.
Cannabinoids.
What a gift.
Flame on if you can. You're looking for that dope weed. Fire it up. Flame on if you can. You're looking for that dope weed. Bully boy's a man. Flame on if you can. You're looking for that dope weed. Flame on is a lighter. If you burn bugs when you cruise, you a rider.
It's time for Normal Show Live's Cannabis Science with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. Dr. Earlywine is a professor of psychology at the State University of New York in Albany and the author of Understanding Marijuana. Now here's your dose of cannabis science.
All right, welcome back, everyone. 28 after the hour, and we're going to get a hold of Dr. Mitch Earlywine. He's a researcher at SUNY Albany, and we talk to him every Wednesday on our Cannabis Science segment. Unfortunately, we're having some trouble getting the call connected. My Skype is misbehaving, and I do not know why. We will see what we can do to get this on the line as fast as we can, but having all sorts of problems today on the technical side of things. We even lost Carrie on our connection, so let's run a break here, a little bumper, and when we come back, we'll have Dr. Mitch on the line for you.
Be about 10 more seconds.
Okay, coming up here. Also, at 45 after, we'll have a little radical rant on the statistics and demographics of marijuana use in America. This is coming up for my presentation in Astoria, Oregon later tonight.
Californians support legalizing and taxing marijuana use?
I think it's time for debate.
NORML Show Live.
And I think that we ought to study very carefully on what other countries are doing that have legalized marijuana and other drugs.
Marijuana Nation.
I saw him hanging there afterwards, a celebration party after the Mr. Olympia, smoking a joint. Did he really smoke a joint? And did he in fact inhale?
Saying I'm in need of a change. I'm in need of a change. See, I used to get high.
John said that you and him used to smoke weed together.
He was right.
He was right?
We always had a good time. We know how to enjoy ourselves.
Nothing to lose. Now I can't get high. Can't get high.
Come on, Cohagen. You got what you want. Give these people air.
Days come to pass and the nights tend to last much longer than they should.
I'll be back.
I used to get high. At the end of the day, and I used to get high. At times ticking away, and I used to get high. Nothing to lose, now I can't get high. Can't get high. And you see, I wrote 1,000 words today. Still could have been.
Michael Phelps, Olympic superstar, 14 gold medals, world record holder. So much for that amotivational syndrome.
Just say no.
No matter what you call it, it's a huge part of popular culture.
Where'd you learn that, Geek? Drug school.
You don't need weed school. You just need a copy of the new book, Pot Culture, the A to Z Guide to Stoner Language and Life.
Hey, this is great, man.
Even if you never smoked marijuana.
I never used marijuana. Sorry.
Don't think you smoked marijuana.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two and didn't inhale.
Or you used to smoke marijuana.
I inhaled frequently. That was the point.
Pot Culture by former High Times editor Steve Bloom and Shirley Halperin will answer every question you ever had about marijuana culture.
Has that marijuana made it back up here yet?
Check out Pot Culture, the A to Z Guide to Stoner Language and Life at Amazon.com or visit potculturebook.com today.
Too bad, man. I just stopped smoking yesterday.
Law420.com. Hello, I'm Russ Belville, Outreach Coordinator for NORML. In my job, I read literally hundreds of headlines each month involving nonviolent, productive citizens whose lives are ripped apart by a marijuana or drug arrest. Many citizens could avoid arrest by refusing police searches and remaining silent, but police are well trained to confuse and intimidate. That's why you have a right to speak to an attorney before answering any police questions. I hope you never need to exercise that right, but if you do, make your first call to the law offices of John C. Lucy IV. John Lucy is an accomplished criminal defense attorney with expertise in Oregon's medical marijuana law. John Lucy understands and respects cannabis and drug consumers of all backgrounds. Call John C. Lucy IV at 503-227-6000 or visit in downtown Portland. Address available at law420.com. That's John C. Lucy IV at 503-227-6000 or visit law420.com today. It's tough talking to kids about marijuana, especially if you might be a parent who dabbled a time or two in your youth. So to help you out, get your copy of Dr. Mitch Earlywine's latest book, A Parent's Guide to Marijuana. Dr. Earlywine is an associate professor of psychology at the State University of New York at Albany and an expert on the studies concerning marijuana, its effect on health and society, and the methodology behind the statistics. He is a frequent guest here on our daily audio stash. Dr. Earlywine lays it all out without the propaganda and scare tactics that parents know won't work with teenagers. He presents a rational understanding of cannabis, what it is and what it isn't, and why kids shouldn't be using marijuana. You can order today through Amazon.com or check our links at our blog, stash.normal.org.
You
You want answers?
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended Shaolin Temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
Welcome back, everyone. 35 after the hour. My apologies to Dr. Mitch Earlywine and to everyone looking forward to speaking and asking questions with him today. For some reason, the machine we use that connects our Skype disconnected from the internet 30 seconds before we brought Dr. Mitch on.
And then my mouse quit working.
His mouse quit working, and the machine's just not working. So we had to give up on it.
One of those days.
One of those days. I apologize. We'll have Dr. Mitch on next week. I want to take a look at, in the Radical Rant today, some information on the latest statistics of cannabis in America, cannabis demographics, who we are, and how much it costs to arrest us for marijuana. And this also contains some slides that we'll be showing up on the webcam. If you'd like more of this information, you can always email me at stash@normal.org or check out our blog stash.normal.org, where most of these are available online. Cannabis Past, Present, and Future is a look at how the prohibition of marijuana came to be and how we can do something about that. And one of the things I always like to point out is that hemp is our heritage in this country. The hemp was first planted in America in the Jamestown colony in 1611, and the colonists were required to grow hemp. It was a necessity for the early colonists, as well as the pioneers who came across on the old wagon trains with the hemp covered wagons and using hemp for oil and so on. Our own Declaration of Independence was written on hemp paper. We the people, written on hemp paper, as well as the Constitution. Our old ships, our sailing ships, used to have hemp sails and hemp riggings, hemp ropes. And of course, during the 1940s, we had the Hemp for Victory program, where hemp was grown in the United States for the effort in World War II. But for most of our heritage in the United States, the plant was known as hemp, and it was used for industrial purposes. It's not until we get to 1850s where cannabis is starting to be used as a legitimate medicine in the United States. Even though the use of cannabis as a medicine dates back to 2727 BC, we have an emperor in China that we have records of him using cannabis as a medicine. Even though it goes back that far, it wasn't really commonly used in the United States until the late 1800s. Now, part of what made this so unfortunate here is that hemp is so superior to many of the products that it would supplant. First of all, it can be used as a fuel, it can be used as a cloth, and lately we've had a new process called Kralar that takes the formerly rough feeling cannabis hemp fabrics and makes them nice and soft and usable for regular applications that we would use cotton or other fibers for. Fuel, of course, the hemp seed will produce a diesel fuel. In fact, the original diesel engines were built to run on hemp seed oil. As a building material, it can be used for pressed boards, for hempcrete. We've had one of the hempcrete manufacturers on our show has talked about all the amazing benefits of using this substance. It can be used for packaging, for plastics and cardboard. It can be used as a paper that is acid, pest, and mildew resistant. And as a food, it has omega-3 and 6 fatty acids in a perfect ratio, 30% protein, most easily digestible by human beings. And $500 billion this market is worldwide in the use of hemp. It's just a shame that we are banning hemp. Banning hemp because some of it is like pot is like banning grape juice because some of it is like wine. So we've got to get hemp, but really the reason that marijuana remains illegal has so much to do with its use as a drug. We see the first banning of cannabis taking place in 1909, the first anti-pot laws passed in El Paso to deal with the Mexican problems. More states, especially the states near Mexico, followed. And it also ties into our prohibition of alcohol. During alcohol prohibition, there was a man named Harry J. Anslinger who was in the Bureau working to fight the bootleggers back during the Prohibition days. When Prohibition ended, he took on the new drug menace, which he considered the Mexican marijuana, in his Federal Bureau of Narcotics. By 1937, all 48 states had made marijuana illegal. Congress had followed suit with the Marijuana Tax Act, which was passed despite the protests of the American Medical Association. Now, as one looks back to the early 20th century and the campaign to ban marijuana, we find that this campaign is steeped in racism. These are some quotes that I've pulled up from some of the various magazines and newspapers during that era. From 1933, the New York Times mentions that, quote, marijuana is highly intoxicating and constitutes an ever-recurring problem where there are Mexicans or Spanish Americans of the lower classes. Again, that's the New York Times saying that. Marijuana produces a wide variety of symptoms in the user, including hilarity, swooning, and sexual excitement. It often makes the smoker vicious with a desire to fight and kill. That's Scientific American from 1936. Marijuana influences Negroes to look at white people in the eye and step on white men's shadows and look at a white woman twice. That's from the Hearst newspapers, 1936. A California man decapitated his best friend while under the spell of the smoke. That's Newsweek magazine from 1937. And it was not just coming from the figures in the media. It was also coming from the top down in our government, from our very own first drug czar, Harry J. Anslinger, who served from the administrations of Franklin Delano Roosevelt all the way through the administration of John F. Kennedy. And he said the primary reason to outlaw marijuana is its effect on the degenerate races. He also said marijuana is taken by musicians, and I'm not speaking about good musicians, but the jazz type. So much of what is made marijuana illegal today owes to early 20th century racism. Now, we need to move on and look at how we can see the changes in marijuana policy as we move up into the 1960s. The Marijuana Tax Act was what was originally passed in 1937 in order to criminalize the use of marijuana. However, it did not actually criminalize marijuana. Back in those days, they actually believed that it was unconstitutional. There was no federal power to ban the use of something like cannabis. In fact, that's why they had to create constitutional amendments to ban alcohol, the 18th Amendment to ban it, and the 21st Amendment that repealed it. So the Tax Act was a method of making marijuana illegal by requiring the purchase of tax stamps in order to legally possess marijuana. And in 1937, Samuel Caldwell's the first man to be arrested. He got 4 years hard labor for 2 joints that he was trying to sell. Meanwhile, marijuana continues to become more and more popular. By the 1950s, the Beat generation is beginning to use marijuana. It becomes very popular within the 1960s counterculture. And in 1969, Dr. Timothy Leary successfully sued, and this case went all the way to the Supreme Court, sued the government to prove the Marijuana Tax Act was unconstitutional. The reason why? In order to go get your tax stamps, you had to bring in your marijuana to be weighed. If you brought in your marijuana to be weighed without first having a tax stamp, you were in illegal possession of marijuana. Dr. Timothy Leary proved, and the court agreed, that you would be incriminating yourself, violating the Fifth Amendment, in order to try to follow the Marijuana Tax Act law. Well, that didn't stop the government. They just moved from having a tax act to having a drug war. Now, in the next series of charts, we're going to take a look at the changes in marijuana policy once Richard Nixon coins the term war on drugs. He declared drugs public enemy number 1. Now, back in those days, we have the opinion polls showing only about 12% support for the legalization of marijuana. President Nixon also continued the racism involved in the war on drugs. One of his quotes from the era was, "You have to face the fact the whole problem is really the blacks. The key is to devise a system that recognizes this all while not appearing to." And when asked about finding how to ban marijuana, he wanted scientists to come back and give him good reasons to back up the federal ban. In that respect, he said, quote, "I want a goddamn strong statement on marijuana. I mean, one that just tears the ass out of them. You know, it's a funny thing. Every one of the bastards that are out for legalizing marijuana is Jewish." Now, that was followed by the appointment of Governor Raymond Schaefer, a Pennsylvania conservative, to head up the commission, the Schaefer Commission, to investigate what we should do about marijuana. In 1972, that commission came back and did make a strong statement. They said it should be decriminalized. As we move forward in time, we get into the era of the 1970s. President Jimmy Carter is in office, and he actually ran for president while calling for the decriminalization of marijuana. Following the end of the Vietnam War and Watergate, the use of marijuana becomes more and more popular, especially as GIs are returning from Vietnam with incredible marijuana strains and a renaissance of cultivation. The popular support for marijuana legalization rises from 12% to as high as 30% in some polls, leading the president in 1977 to propose before Congress the decriminalization of marijuana. President Carter said, quote, "Penalties against drug use should not be more damaging to an individual than the use of a drug itself. Nowhere is this more clear than in the laws against the possession of marijuana in private for personal use." By this time in America, 28% of all Americans have tried marijuana. Now, another development that happens in the late 1970s that presages the medical marijuana laws we have today is a lawsuit by a man named Robert Randall. He was a glaucoma patient who said that he needed to use marijuana or else he would lose his sight. Thanks to this lawsuit, the federal government set up the Compassionate Investigative New Drug Program, allowing Robert Randall to use marijuana for medical purposes. To this day, there are still 4 surviving patients from this Compassionate Investigative New Drug Program who are legally using medical marijuana under federal law. Unfortunately, there is a turn that happens also as well at the end of the 1970s, and that is the conflation of marijuana with another popular drug at the time, cocaine. And in 1978, Dr. Peter Bourne, Carter's special assistant on health issues, is forced to resign in a cocaine and prescription sedative scandal. This leads us to the era of the 1980s, and from that point, the election of President Ronald Reagan, a conservative renaissance, and a decline in the popular support for marijuana legalization. This is also on the heels of celebrity deaths from overdoses on cocaine. 1980, Richard Pryor suffers his freebasing accident. 1983, John Belushi suffers his cocaine overdose. 1986, the Boston Celtics' Len Bias suffers a cocaine overdose. And the conflation of cocaine and marijuana led many people to have an anti-marijuana point of view. There were also many parents groups that started in the late 1980s to combat the all-time high use of drugs in 1979. The support for marijuana legalization declines from 30% to 21% in that 5-year span. Of course, President Reagan was well known for his wife, Nancy Reagan, who in 1982 first told school children to just say no. And one of Reagan's famous quotes on marijuana was, "I now have absolute proof that smoking even one marijuana cigarette is equal in brain damage to being on Bikini Island during an H-bomb blast." That's right, smoking pot as bad as nuclear fallout. In 1983, the trend continues with the parents groups leading to the creation of Drug Abuse Resistance Education, or DARE, which was founded in Los Angeles, that brought cops to classrooms to teach health misinformation about marijuana and drugs. By this time in history, 29% of Americans have tried marijuana. In the next 5 years, the war on drugs goes into high gear as the Democratic Congress also jumps on the bandwagon. In 1985, Jack Herer publishes The Emperor Wears No Clothes and also helps to unearth the footage of the Hemp for Victory campaign, but that might be the only good news we find in that 5-year period. In 1986, the Congress, led by Democratic Speaker Tip O'Neill, passes mandatory minimum sentencing for marijuana and drugs. We'll be looking at that statistic in a future chart. In 1987, Judge Douglas Ginsburg loses his Supreme Court nomination for admitting his past marijuana use. And in 1988, Joe Biden, who was then a Democratic senator, creates the Office of National Drug Control Policy, aka the Drug Czar's Office. By this point in time, the support for marijuana legalization has decreased to a low of 16%, yet 31% of all Americans have tried marijuana. As we approach the 1990s, President Bush, the first President Bush in 1991, closes the Compassionate Investigative New Drug Program that was started in 1978, the Federal Medical Marijuana Program, because HIV and AIDS patients had discovered the medical utility of using cannabis for their condition, and the federal offices were flooded with applications from AIDS patients. So President Bush closed the program. At that time, the program had 28 patients, and again today there are 4 who are still living. In 1992, a major change happens when Bill Clinton is elected President of the United States, despite admitting to past marijuana use, sort of, when he said, "I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it. I didn't inhale, and I never tried it again." Still, 31% of Americans have tried marijuana, and there is a slight uptick in the popular support, rising from 16% to 23% for marijuana legalization. As the 90s continue, in 1996 we get the best news on the chart with California legalizing the medicinal use of marijuana through Proposition 215. The federal government, a Democratic administration that is, fights back against medical marijuana, and in 1997, Clinton drug policy advisor Rahm Emanuel pushes a plan to punish doctors for merely talking about medical marijuana. Despite these threats, 3 more states legalized the medicinal use of marijuana in 1998, Washington, Oregon, and Alaska. The popular support for marijuana legalization rises still from 23% to 29%, and by this time, more than a third, 35% of all Americans have tried marijuana in their lifetime. Leading into the 21st century, the year 2000, we find the support continuing to increase even through the election of a new conservative regime with George W. Bush. We have Maine, Nevada, Hawaii, Nevada, and Colorado passing medical marijuana laws, and the support for marijuana legalization rising from 29% to 36%. This is aided by some events, including the 1999 Institute of Medicine debunking the criminalization and gateway fears of marijuana, and in 2003, a Supreme Court decision that protects doctors with their free speech rights to recommend medical marijuana. The use of marijuana has also gone up. 40% of all Americans by the year 2004 have tried marijuana. That leads us to where we are today, with President Barack Obama being the president who admitted that he inhaled frequently. That was the point. We have more medical marijuana states, including the most recent states, Michigan, New Jersey, the District of Columbia, and Arizona, making 15 states and D.C. that recognize the medical use of marijuana. In 2006, Dr. Donald Tashkin, in a very important study, finds no link between marijuana and cancer. And in 2009, the Holder memo from Attorney General Eric Holder tells the feds to back off of the medical marijuana states. This leads to, in 2010, a historic vote on marijuana legalization in the state of California, with 47% in that vote supporting the legalization plan, and the polls for marijuana legalization reaching 46% in the Gallup poll, 52 and 53% in the Angus Reid poll. It's not a question of if we will legalize marijuana, it is a question of when. Part of the reason why marijuana legalization is so inevitable has to do with the demographics. There are just too many of us now to ignore. This chart shows us the number of marijuana users, both total and as a percentage of the overall population. Back in 1987, there were 50 million marijuana users in this country. Now, in 2009, there are over 105 million users of marijuana, people 12 and older who have tried marijuana at least once in their lifetime. By a percentage, 27.9% of the United States population 12 and older in 1987 had tried marijuana. Now it is 41.7% of all Americans have tried marijuana at least once. This is broken down by demographic groups is also more promising, as all demographic groups under the age of 50, more than half have used marijuana in their lifetime. And for those 50 and older, that number is rapidly increasing from 18% of use in the ages 50 and older in 2001 to now over 33% in 2009. If someone's 50 or younger, it's a half and half chance they've used marijuana. If they're 50 and older, it's a 1 in 3 chance that they have used marijuana in their lifetime. But of course, these numbers talk about lifetime use, people that may have used once, maybe they tried it in college and never tried it again. What about people that are using marijuana on a fairly regular basis? Marijuana use is primarily a function of youth. In this graph, we can see the people 18 to 25 years old, and the overall height of the graph shows us that 31.2% of all people 18 to 25 will smoke marijuana at least once this year. That's almost 1 in 3 young people between 18 and 25 will smoke marijuana at least once this year. The shading of the boxes from dark green to light green show us how often they will use marijuana. The lightest green represents people that will only use marijuana 1 to 5 days per year. The darkest green shows us the people that will use it more than 100 days per year, almost twice a week or more. In that case, people aged 18 to 25, 12.4% of them are using marijuana at least twice a week or more. This represents 1 out of 8 young adults 18 to 25 who are using marijuana at least twice a week. However, for those who are scared about the addictiveness potential, we can look at the next few demographics to find how marijuana is just not that addictive. The use from ages 26 to 34 drop in half by almost every demographic. 16.3% of people 26 to 34 will use at least once this year, and only 6.3% of them will use twice a week, half what we found in 18 to 25. And when we look to 35 to 49, the numbers decrease by half again. Only 8.4% of people 35 to 49 will use marijuana once this year. Only 2.9% will use it more than twice a week. And again, when we look to the group 50 and older, the numbers decrease by half again, with only 3.8% of people 50 and older using marijuana once this year. Now, marijuana use is also characterized many times as a problem of minorities, but when we look at the actual figures, we find that minority groups, Hispanics and African Americans and Asians, are among the least likely to have ever used marijuana. 46.3% of white folks have used marijuana in their lifetime, compared to only 29.9% of Hispanics who have ever used marijuana, and 38.4% of blacks who have ever used marijuana. Asians make up the group least likely to try marijuana, with only 14% having ever tried marijuana. Of other groups, multiracial groups are 48.6%. Native Americans are the only group that are more likely to have used marijuana. 55.5% of Native Americans have tried marijuana. Pacific Islanders only 42.2%. And again, the overall is 41% of all Americans who have tried marijuana in their lifetime. Also, cannabis users tend to be better educated than the general public. American adults with a high school diploma or less, only 33% have tried marijuana, whereas people with 1 year of college or more, 47.6% chance that they have used marijuana in their lifetime. The polls are showing us that the people are getting behind the notion of legalizing marijuana. These numbers come just from the Gallup polls, where we started in 1969 with 84% people who said we should keep marijuana prohibited. It has declined now in 2009 to only 50% of the American public who think marijuana should still be prohibited, and 46% who think it should be legalized. When we break down that 46% for legalization, we can see some interesting demographic figures. People who are moderates or liberals are more than likely to want to legalize marijuana. 51% of moderates and 72% of liberals, compared to only 30% of conservatives. By political party, Democrats and independents are more likely to want to legalize marijuana. 55% of Democrats, 54% of independents, only 29% of Republicans. By gender, women are only 41% in support, while men are 51% in support. And of course, by age group, there's a great difference. 18 to 29-year-olds support legalization at 61%, 30 to 49-year-olds at 49%, 50 to 64-year-olds at 43%, and 65 plus support at about 35%. Finally, geography, people in the West are the most likely to want to support marijuana legalization at 58%, while people in the South are the least likely at only 40% of Southerners that would support marijuana legalization. Now, marijuana legalization has been studied by many governments. All the way back to 1894, we find the British East India Survey that recommends the decriminalization of marijuana. Through the 1900s and 2000, every government that has ever studied the question of legalizing marijuana has decided that it should be decriminalized. This is a war on marijuana consumers. The arrests prove it. 51.6% of all arrests in the war on drugs are for marijuana possession or cultivation. More than half of all drug arrests are for marijuana. This has led to 858,000 Americans being arrested every year for the use of marijuana in this country. It's got to stop, and us here at NORML, along with your help, will do everything we can to end it. Thanks for joining us for NORML Show Live, and apologize for the technical difficulties we had earlier. Stay tuned for Hour 2. We'll go over some more of these charts, and we'll take your questions and calls at 971-533-7111. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is NORML Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it.